And I'll be talking, we're talking about upgrading to Jakarta E10, which is more or less Javax to Jakarta Prefix, but there's also a lot more. So I will show you how to do it in an easy way, because there were a lot of hassles in the community in the past with this, but now we have pretty good options, pretty easy options to upgrade to the Jakarta E10 without all these troubles that some people experienced in the past. There's something about me briefly. I'm a Java champion, Czech Java user group lead, Jakarta EE specifications committer, so I'm trying to be really active with the community and work with mainly Jakarta EE community, but also any Java developer, at least in the Czech region, where I organize Java user group meetings. And I'm also a director at Omnifish, which is a company that provides Glassfish support for the Glassfish application server, and is also involved in Jakarta EE as a working group member. So let's start with upgrading first to Jakarta E9 before we can upgrade to Jakarta E10. So basically the main change, and some would say or would think that it's the only change, is the Javax to Jakarta package prefix replacement or migration. So in theory, nothing really difficult. Some people try to solve this problem by search and replacing their code, and yeah, why not? We can be done very fast, right? Except not really. It's not all completely like that. If you try to do that, you will very soon hit some issues. So it looks bright, but I will show you that that is not always the case, or mostly it's not the case, because it's not only about package renaming, and it's not only about renaming in your source code, but also in all the libraries you have in your application. And most applications, even if they are deployed on an application server that provides all the Jakarta EE APIs, most applications bundle a lot of other dependencies for a lot of stuff, and some of them are extensions on top of Jakarta EE. Some are just some servlet listeners. Some are just mapping JSON, but a lot of them already use things that were renamed, or packages that were renamed in Jakarta E9. There are also some XML namespaces renamed, while you can use mostly, if you don't need to use the new features, you can use mostly the old namespaces. They are recognized by application servers, but it's useful to also migrate to a newer namespace to be able to use the newer features in XMLs if you need. Sometimes you still need XMLs, although most of the time you go with annotations. And the tricky thing is that also property names were renamed. So if you configure something in those XMLs or in some other places, you also have to think about renaming them. Sometimes you also need to refer to the packages or full classes, including the package name, in the text files, mostly again in XMLs or in facelets if you use Jakarta faces. And then you also need to replace these references also there. But the most tricky part is that you cannot do that easily in your dependencies, because you don't have the source code of the dependencies, and even if you had, you don't want to recompile everything and maintain yourself. So that's the tricky part. I will talk about that later, how to deal with that pretty efficiently. And then another new thing in Jakarta E10, which is next step after upgrading to Jakarta E9, is that Jakarta E10 dropped some APIs. Fortunately, it's the only APIs that were long obsolete, so you shouldn't have used them in the first place. Most libraries out there in their recent versions don't use them, because library maintainers knew that they are obsolete and will be dropped in some time. but sometimes your application may use either an old library or it directly uses these old APIs because the application is very old. So you might need to address this too. This Javax to Jakarta renaming, as I said, impacts your application if you use the dependencies that use them, if you use them in code. And basically this impacts all your applications that use that run on application servers or even small containers like Tomcat and Jetty. A lot of frameworks like Spring and Quarkus in their recent versions are impacted. So if you use these or even many other things, or even maybe you don't use them, but you use a dependency in your application that somehow uses Jakarta modules, even if it's just for parsing JSON, you may be impacted. So pretty a lot of people started to be impacted, especially once Spring Boot upgraded to Jakarta EE, because it's probably the most used, most frequently used framework out there when you deal with Java. But together, if we count all the frameworks on the application servers, it's very a lot of people and projects that are impacted. That's why I'm having this presentation right now, because there is a chance that you still haven't upgraded and you might benefit from what I'm going to show you. So how to deal with this mess? If you have dirty dishes, normally you really have to get your hands dirty and wash the dishes, unless you have some clever idea. And in this case, with dishes, it's quite easy. You can have a dishwasher, which makes it much easier because it automates cleaning washes. And we can do that also with transforming our code. So yeah, search and replace is already an automation, but it's not very clever. It's more clever to use specialized tools to do the transformation. One of them is Eclipse Transformer, and Eclipse means that it's in the Eclipse Foundation as an open source project. OpenRewrite is another open source project, which is not in the Eclipse Foundation, so it's just OpenRewrite, but they are both, they're out there, they are open source and you can easily use them. And they have their own advantages and disadvantages, so it's very useful to use them both, and I will explain why. Eclipse Transformer converts Javax to Jakarta, obviously, if it's going to help us. Same applies to OpenRewrite. It also converts property names in all the resources it can find. And it also upgrades most of the XAML namespaces in Jakarta EE. I say most because I found some places where there is probably a bug in Eclipse Transformer and misses some namespaces. But the idea is that it transforms everything to a modern version of your application. So everything it can find and can be transformed to be as new for Jakarta E9. It will do that. I'm saying Jakarta E9 specifically because it still doesn't support Jakarta E10 yet, which means it will do all these migrations, but it will not refactor on your code or deal anyhow with those dropped APIs that were dropped in Jakarta E10. So you might still need to do some more work, and we'll get to that. You can use this transformer easily on command line and as an Maven plugin. Both have its use case. For command line, it's useful for transforming your source code because you do that only once. So you can run it on command line, provided your project, and it will create transform sources, which you can replace. As a Maven plugin, it has a different use case because it can also transform anything that is in your binaries, in your var file, or in your jar dependencies. So you can modify existing binary artifact without recompiling everything. It will find all the class files, all the bytecode files, and we will modify the bytecode. So even after the compilation, you can fix the application to use the new Jakarta package prefix. You will find the resources in in those jar or WAR files, and it will replace everything. More or less, it's the same as if you decompiled the binary, replaced these references in source code and compiled again. So it will spare you this job. It can post-process any binary with the same rules. So this is where it's good. With OpenRewrite, you can't do that. OpenRewrite only works on source code level. But what is useful for it contains a lot more recipes, not only for Jakarta EE. You can also upgrade your source code to use new Java features if you upgrade to a new Java version, to refactor some old syntactic constructs to newer, more modern constructs with just one single command. It works similarly as transformer, or it can be used similarly on command line as a Maven plugin, and it also has a Gradle plugin, which I saw basically more or less the use case for command line, because for source code, as I said, you migrate source code once and then store it in the version control, but you can automate it as a Maven plugin or a Gradle if you want. The best thing, or best use of these tools, as according to my experience, is to combine Transformer and OpenRewrite. The reason is that Transformer can be used also on binaries. That's one case where you cannot use OpenRewrite. And another thing is that for Jakarta EE 10 to 9 migration, I saw that Transformer still has better results. It transforms more things, including all those properties and some references in annotations, some JNDI names, than OpenRewrite, which does a pretty good job, but you would still have to manually replace some things probably in your application. So according to my experience, it's best to start with Transformer and to upgrade to Jakarta E9, and then also apply OpenRewrite, which will do the extra step and refactor for the dropped APIs, because these can be mostly replaced by existing alternatives in Jakarta E10, or refactored to use a different approach, different methods, things like that. So there are a lot of recipes in OpenRewrite to aid with this refactoring, and this is where OpenRewrite is very useful for, because it can be used also for other frameworks. When you have a new version of the framework, it can have some breaking changes, and if there is an OpenRewrite recipe, you can use this recipe to also adapt to these breaking changes automatically. That's how tools like Quarkus or other frameworks use it. Also, like some of these frameworks integrate OpenRewrite and provide the recipes when they introduce a breaking change. For Jakarta EE, there is the Jakarta E10 recipe, which combines all the recipes related to Jakarta E10. And you can use it either directly on Jakarta E8 to migrate directly to Jakarta E10. But as I said, doing it first with Transformer and then OpenRewrite brings better results. So I will move to showing, not just telling. Now I introduce you to basically all the theory, all the tools, and I will try to explain you how to apply them in the best way, and or at least from my experience, to get the best result for any application that you want to migrate to Jakarta E10. So first, as I said, Transformer is good to get the best results to migrate to Jakarta E9. So I will use the Transformer. You can use also Transformer to migrate your whole binary, your whole WAR file or jar file, if you want to test that everything works. If your application doesn't use the APIs that were dropped in Jakarta E10, there is pretty big chance that your application will just need to be transformed with a single command, and then you can run in a Jakarta E9 runtime. But it won't help you if you want to develop your application more. You will still be stuck to Java EE8 source code, and you will not be able to use newer features. In Jakarta EE9, there were no new features, but in Jakarta EE10, there are some new features you might want to use. If you want to use a newer dependency that works only with Jakarta prefix, then you can't compile it against Java EE8 code. So it's limited, but it's a good thing if you want to just start to try your, if especially simple application, if it works. So I'll explain very, sorry, okay, very briefly how you can use this tool to just post-process your war application. We'll check out my base branch, which I forgot to check out. Okay, this one. So I'll demonstrate all the transformations on a demo project, which is called Cargo Tracker. This is a demo project in the Eclipse Foundation, developed by the community to demonstrate a lot of features of Jakarta EE. And it's been recently migrated. I'll show you the page. It's been recently migrated to the Jakarta EE10, but I will show you how it could be done with just automatic tools. So this is the page of Cargo Tracker. This is not the application, but this is the page about it. We can run the application. It will look similarly, but it provides basically a demo UI to schedule shipping packages, shipping cargo with cargo ships across the whole globe. So you can set up a route through different ports to deliver the cargo and then schedule this. And it has some administration interface to do this, and then you have a like user interface where you can have a package number and you can track its status where the package is and when it's going to be delivered. So pretty simple, but it demonstrates a lot of Jakarta EE APIs. And to make it more complicated, I also added some artificial dependencies because the original application only uses prime faces for UI, but the rest is just Jakarta EE. But in the real life, you will probably see a lot more in your application. So I added also JavaPro reports library and Quad scheduler. We'll explain why I did it. But first, let me show you how you can just take your application. Ideally, if it's a Maven project, you can use the Transformer Eclipse plugin, just like this. You add the Transformer plugin into your project, and the Transformer is already more inclined to Jakarta EE recipes, although it's in theory it supports many recipes similar to OpenRewrite. But it's tuned to support Jakarta EE, so it has a nice convenient option, just Jakarta defaults true. And this will apply all the Jakarta EE transformations, Jakarta EE9 at this stage. And with this, you can either transform the war file, or you can also transform the war directory. Doesn't matter if it's a war file, a zip file, or the directory that it has the same structure. And it only is different which goal you call on the Transformer plugin. With this, what happens, I can run the build. What happens is your build will run as before, but the plugin will be applied after the package is built, and it will modify the package. And it hooks into Maven, and it will replace the package that Maven created with a transform package. So if you deploy it to some directory, or even if you look at the target directory, and if you try to deploy the application, it will already work as a Jakarta EE9 application with all the Javax to Jakarta prefix is changed and all the migration is done. Here in this demo, I do the transformation twice to transform also the directory and the final var. The reason here is that in this IDE, in NetBeans IDE and many other IDEs, you would deploy the directory to application server. So if I only transformed the var file, I would have problems because the directory would not be transformed. So I'm transforming also the directory. And in the target, here we can see the directory and the file. It appears exactly as if I didn't use the plugin. But if we look deeper into this, let me find an example. Let's see, I have this JavaPro reports library. And if I go to this, I will find you an example code inside. So NetBeans will show me how the code would look like if I had the Java code of this class. And there is this Java EE. There are some servers defining JavaPro. And here we can see that if we decompile the bytecode, we can see that it already uses Jakarta. If we have a look at the dependency, here, the original dependency of Jakarta, of JavaPro reports, same class, ODT servlets. If we look at the original dependency, it uses Javax. So the transformer basically does the injection of Jakarta package into the final artifact. If you try to deploy it, it will work because it's Jakarta EE9 var file, and it shouldn't have issues with the Jakarta EE9 runtime. I'm saying you might have some because the transformer may not cover all the 100% of use cases, but it will cover 99% according to my experience. We can use transformer also to transform the source code, which we can do with a simple command. And that's like the next step. If after you tried, maybe it was maybe successfully or not, after you try to transform the var file, now we can try to actually transform the source code with the transformer. And its transformer provides a jar distribution, and you can just run it, provide the src as the directory. It will run the same transformations, but on the source directory, and we will create a new directory called output src. I will delete the original, rename this one to src, and now we can see that there are a lot of changes. So the transformer actually replaced all these Javax to Jakarta in our source code. It also replaced some, if I can find it, yeah, some references in WebXML from Javax to Jakarta. So now, just with a single command, we can now use all the Jakarta EE9 APIs. Yeah, we'll stick with Jakarta EE9 for now with Eclipse Transformer. But we still have problems. One thing why it doesn't compile is I need to modify the POM XML because I only modify the sources. So now I will upgrade to, okay, I can upgrade to 9.1. It's not a big difference. And now I can try to build, but I will still fail, either during build or during deployment. The reason is I still have some dependencies which are not migrated. So if I keep the transformation up at the var level, it will also transform all the dependencies. But it's possible that now that I upgraded source code, it will not match the binaries. And I still have some issues here. So this is because the binary the dependency prime faces is not compatible with our source code anymore. So I need to upgrade also the dependency. The latest one from prime faces is version 13.003, but I still have issues. And this is because prime faces is one of those libraries that still supports both Java EX and Jakarta Prefix. In other words, it still supports Jakarta EE8 and Jakarta EE9+. And we need to distinguish with the classifier if we're using a Maven project. And if we use the Jakarta classifier version of the dependency, it will download the one that is compatible with Jakarta EE9. And then we see that the problems are gone. And now we can easily clean build, and even without the transformer. So we can remove this and we'll still be able to build. But we'll not be able to run the application, but we'll get to that later. The reason is that I introduced these two dependencies, specifically these two, because they still use Javax and not Jakarta. So our code doesn't use them. They are used automatically when they are in the application, because they bind into the Jakarta EE API and trigger some server initialization, something at our application startup. But then they would fail because the application server, the runtime, will not have the same classes under the same package prefix. So we'll need to deal with that later. But just to finish the transformation of the source code, as I said before, I will also use OpenRewrite. This is in case our application uses some annotations which were dropped, or some code that needs to be refactored because the APIs were dropped and we need to use some other API to implement the same thing. There was nothing dropped in Jakarta EE that couldn't be replaced with something else. That's still the main promise of Jakarta EE, so that it will not drop anything useful. So it will first obsolete some functionality, and when it can be replaced by a newer, better API, better functionality, only then it will drop the old features. So that happened in Jakarta EE10, but there's always a replacement. It's not always straightforward, so not everything can be automated, but you can definitely rewrite all the codes from Jakarta EE9 to Jakarta EE10 and have the same functionality. So to help with this, I will use OpenRewrite, and it's very similar. In this case, OpenRewrite basically uses, or I will use the Maven plugin, but on the command line. And for that, I need Maven to be installed. So I will run Maven. Okay, I didn't show you all the commands. What happened? I need to, okay. So this is the whole command of OpenRewrite. It's more complicated because it provides also the configuration for OpenRewrite, which is, with Transformer, it was using Jakarta EE migration by default. Here we need to tell it to use migrate Java transformation and the recipe for Jakarta EE10. And also we provide Maven plugin coordinates for Maven. So this is how it works. We don't use the jar, executable jar, but we use the Maven directly, and we use the plugin. And with this, we can execute it directly on the Maven project. With Transformer, we execute it on the source code. If we did it on the main project, it will still just migrate the source code. Transformer can also update your POM.xml file, which is not always useful because it's not very clever all the time, but it's good to give it a try and see what it does. So I'll run it. What happens? Sorry, I think I have these empty lines. Okay. And what happens? I'm sorry, I will try to find it in history. This works. Okay, I had some mistake there, but this is the more or less the command. It takes a bit longer than Eclipse Transformer. I don't know why. Maybe the implementation is not so efficient, or it has more transformations. It also tries to build the project. This is the difference with Transformer. It first tries to build the project to see if the project compiles in the beginning, and then it will apply the transformations. So it's more robust, but it takes a bit longer. We'll look at the end results soon. But meanwhile, let's talk more about dependencies. As I already told you, I'll just check the time. Okay. As I already told you, it's not only about source code, and you also often cannot only, or it's not useful to migrate to transform the whole application. So basically, the end result usually would be combining both approaches, transform the source code and also transform some dependencies. For a lot of dependencies, you can just upgrade them to use Jakarta EE10, as I did with prime faces already. So that will be the easiest approach. Unless the dependency doesn't use Java EE at all, then you can just keep it there. But if you find a dependency that uses some Jakarta EE APIs, first try to find a newer version if you can upgrade. Sometimes because of some things you cannot upgrade to a newer version, or you don't want to, or because the library introduces some breaking changes, or I don't know, it's only requires newer Java version that you can use. But if you can upgrade, that's the easiest, because then you can just use it out of the box as before, and it will work with Jakarta EE9 or 10. If you cannot do that, and that's why I chose these Quartz and Jasper reports dependencies to show you an example of popular libraries where you cannot do that yet. We need to transform them to fully upgrade to Jakarta EE10 and without limitations. And for that, it's a bit complicated, but still can be pretty well automated. And again, I would use Eclipse Transformer because that's the one that is capable of modifying an existing artifact, modifying an existing jar file. And the only problem is that you have to do it separately. So you have to build a separate Maven artifact that is transformed, and then use it as a dependency in your projects. And if you have more these dependencies, you may need to create more separate projects. The easiest approach is to create one separate project, put all those dependencies you need to transform there, and transform them into a single jar file. It's a bit messy because the final jar file would contain all the dependencies. You would not end up with Jasper reports, Quartz, and all their dependencies as separate jar files in your application, but you would have one single jar file with everything. But that's the sad story. But it's just the easiest. I will show you in a while. So here the OpenRewrite finally finished. It didn't take so long, but still it took about half a minute or so. We see now OpenRewrite provides nice report of what it did. So it didn't have to do much on our application because we already used Eclipse Transformer and we don't use the API that were dropped in Jakarta EE10. If we did, it would apply also all those migrations. Here it basically just upgraded the dependency version in POM.xml, and another one thing pretty nice is it changed the XML schema in persistence XML file. This is the one schema that Eclipse Transformer missed, or maybe it missed it because it's in a test directory or it has a different file name, I'm not sure. But OpenRewrite will also replace it under these conditions. So this is an example why it's good to combine them. If I did it the other way, and first run OpenRewrite and then Eclipse Transformer, you would still see if Transformer doesn't provide you such a nice report. But if you check the source code, you would still see that the Eclipse Transformer also does some transformations on top of OpenRewrite. So it's good to combine them in whichever order, but I found by empirically that Transformer should be the first, and then OpenRewrite the second, and it will produce the best results. So with this, we only have this one difference, that the version number of these dependencies changed. Otherwise, OpenRewrite is happy with the changes we did to the Transformer. And that's it. And now we're more or less ready to compile Jakarta EE10, but still, as I said, because of these dependencies, I artificially edited this application. We're not able. And these JavaPro reports and Quartz libraries don't have a version that is compatible with Jakarta EE9. So during deployment, you would still fail. Quartz is on a good path. There is a release candidate version. I think it probably is already in Maven Central. Yes, 250 or 240 release candidates. Which one of them already has Jakarta EE9 support. So if you decide to use the release candidate, you're already done with Quartz. If you need to wait for a final version, you can still use Transformer or just wait with your upgrades because it's coming. Jakarta EE9 support for Quartz scheduler is coming very soon. With JavaPro reports, that's a different story. JavaPro reports looks like a very useful library. I saw it in many projects, but it's not being maintained. No, it is maintained. It's still maintained, but not in the way that it would adopt Jakarta EE anytime soon. So it probably is just maintained for fixing bugs, but not upgrading stuff. So I didn't see any message or any plan to support Jakarta EE9 in JavaPro reports. So with this, I will show you an approach, not on cargo tracker, but on a sample application that uses the same dependencies, how to deal with this. So the approach I found works pretty well is to separate the application into two components. And in Maven, I would have a parent project and the main application and the helper module, which is transform dependencies. And the helper module is the most important, most interesting stuff. If we have a look at the main application basically just depends on this module. And if we have these dependencies, like JavaPro reports, Quartz schedule, we know that they don't support Jakarta namespace yet. We will remove them from the main project and move it into this helper project. And instead we'll just choose this just one single transform dependencies artifact. So we'll move to this project, and this is where I move them. Now they are dependencies not of the main application, but they are transitive dependencies of this transform dependency module. The main application depends on this module, and this module depends on these dependencies that need to be transformed. The end result of this module is that we have one big jar file with this Jakarta one. Sorry, I don't know if I can make it bigger. Maybe yes. Yeah. So here the final jar file contains all the classes from all these dependencies. That's the easiest way I found to transform all of them together without creating a separate module for each dependency. And even if you do that, you still need to package all its transitive dependencies. So Jasper Reports has a lot of transitive dependencies. It brings in even JChart. It brings some common libraries for logging and things like that. And some of them also use Javax prefixes. So it's not enough to transform just the jar file of Jasper Reports. You need to transform all the dependencies, or at least those that need the Javax prefix, because you need to transform them to Jakarta prefix. And this way we can have just one module. We bundle everything together, and you see that there is Jasper Reports inside. There are these J3. There is also Quartz, which is the other dependency, but also all the other dependencies, just their classes bundled together in a single jar file. And this jar file is then added to, not here, in the main application. And if we have a look at the application, it basically contains it contains a lot of it shouldn't contain, I think I need to rebuild this. It should only contain the Jasper reports. Oh, no, not the Jasper reports. I wonder what happened here. Yes, this is the main application. I will try to rebuild. And it should, instead of all the dependencies brought in with Jasper reports and Quartz, it should just bring our shaded dependency, which we created. And I will bring it back. And the way how I did it is I used Maven Shaded plugin, which automatically takes all the dependencies, bundles them together into one jar file. And then there is a Transformer Maven plugin, which does the same thing I was showing you before. It applies all these transformations on the jar created by the Shade plugin, and it replaces all the Javax to Jakarta EE on this one single artifact that contains all the dependencies you need to transform and all the transitive dependencies. And with this, you basically are done. It's not an ideal solution. Ideal would be if all the dependencies were upgradable and you would use the latest version. Then you're all nice and clean with Jakarta EE10. But if some of the dependencies are not like that and you want to upgrade to Jakarta EE10, you can if you use this transformation on individual dependencies. If you want to upgrade dependencies, as I did with prime faces, it's also not that straightforward, because some libraries just support Jakarta in their latest version, like Hibernate. If you just upgrade Hibernate version, it's directly using Jakarta EE, Jakarta prefix. Some, like prime faces, provide two different variants, and you have to make sure that you use the correct one, either with the classifier Jakarta. Some libraries just have different artifact names, so it's not all the time the same thing, but the Jakarta classifier is very common. So if the library the latest version of the library doesn't provide Jakarta version. Look for the Jakarta classifier first, and there is a high chance you will find the artifact you need. So yeah, with all these, I'm done. And if you apply all these things, including the transforming your dependencies, it's very likely that you will be able to run your current application in Jakarta EE runtime or framework without too much manual intervention in your application and without issues in production. So I don't know if we have some questions now, but I think we still have some time.
Yes, thank you so much, Ondro, for your interesting insights. As you already said, if you have any further questions, just unmute yourself or just write in the chat. Okay, if not, then thank you so much, Ondro.
And questions, I don't know. Then check out the resources. After my talk, I hope you will be able to get to my slides. If not, just search on the internet. There's Eclipse Transformer project, OpenRewrite project, and a lot of these, basically all that I told you is also described in the Omnifish blog that I wrote on our company blog, including sample applications. So you can study some applications that are on GitHub to see how to apply these Transformer Maven plugin, how to run the OpenRewrite command, and then you can experiment with your own application. And if you find any issues, let me know or raise an issue on these sample applications or anywhere, so that we can spread the news and improve the guides. Thank you very much, and I hope you are successful with Jakarta E10, and very soon we will start using its new features.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Then we will continue with a break and we start at 11 again. So we see us later.
There are some, I think, questions in the chat I see now. Batavia project is a wrapper around the Eclipse Transformer to help with library migration. I haven't checked it out, so yeah, this is good to check out. I will check it out and see if I can upgrade the guides. Batavia project or Eclipse or an Apache Artemis projects. Yeah, I think this is more like for library maintainers to help them upgrade their libraries to Jakarta EE. So it's not so much probably for you as an application developer, but it's good to see the efforts to help library maintainers to upgrade to Jakarta EE and provide their libraries for Jakarta EE. Hopefully very soon we will not need to use Transformer only for our source code, and then just upgrade to newer versions of libraries.